Bhagavad Gita, chapter 2, verse 67 and 68. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopi Janaballabha Girivaradhari Jaya Gopi Janaballabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Jamuna Tira Banachari Jamuna Tira Banachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopi Janaballabha Girivaradhari Jaya Gopi Janaballabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Jamuna Tira Banachari Jamuna Tira Banachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jayam Vishnupada Paramahansa Paribrajakachaja Stotara Sata Shri Srimad Haisi Bhaktivedanta Swami Shri Prabhupada Ki Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai Namacharya Sila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Prem se kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasari Gaura Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shama Kunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhan Ki Jai Shri Vrindavan Mathura Dham Ki Jai Navadip Mayapur Dham Ki Jai Jamuna Mai Ki Jai Ganga Mai Ki Jai Bhakti Devi Ki Jai Tulsi Devi Ki Jai Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. Bhagavad Gita, chapter 2, verse 67 and 68. Indriyanam hicharatam yam manonu vidhiyate tadasya harati prajnam vayurnavamivam bhasi. Indriyanam icharatam yan manonu vidhiyate tadasya harati punjam vayurnavamivam basi. Indriyam hi charatam yan manonu vidhiyate tadasya harati prajnam vayurnavamivam basi. Indriyanam, of the senses, he certainly, charatam, while herding over, yat that, mana, mind, anuvidyate, becomes constantly engaged, tat, that, asya, his, harati, takes away, prajnam, intelligence, vayu, wind, navam, a boat, iva, like, hamhasi, on the water. Translation and purport by Srila Prabhupada. As a boat on the water is swept away by a strong wind, even one of the senses on which the mind focuses can carry away a man's intelligence. Purport. Unless all of the senses are engaged in the service of the Lord, even one of them engaged in sense gratification can deviate the devotee from the path of transcendental advancement. As mentioned in the life of Ambarish Maharaj, all of the senses must be engaged in Krishna consciousness, for that is a correct technique for controlling the mind. Text 68. Tasmad yasya mahabaho nirgritani sarvashaha indriyani indriyartebhyas tasya pragya pratishtita. Tasmad yasya mahabaho nigritani sarvashaha indriyani indriyartebhyas tasya pragya pratishtita. Tasmad, therefore, yasya, of one, mahabaho, almighty armed one, nigritani, so curbed down, sarvashaha, all around, indriyani, the senses, indriyartebhyaha, for the sake of sense objects, tasya, his, pragya, intelligence, pratishtita, fixed. Translation. Therefore, almighty armed, one whose senses are restrained from their objects is certainly of steady intelligence. Purport. As enemies are curbed by superior force, similarly the senses can be curbed not by any human endeavor, but only by keeping them engaged in the service of the Lord. One who has understood this, that only by Krishna consciousness is one really established in intelligence, and that one should practice this art under the guidance of a bona fide spiritual master, is called sadhaka, or a suitable candidate for liberation. So the word sadhaka is related to the word sadhu, and the root is sat. Sat means the truth, what is real. What is real is not the temporary body. The temporary body is unreal. It is unreal because it will die. It is not a permanent fact. It is a temporary manifestation, and with death it will pass away, never to be found again. And within this temporary body is the soul, which aspires to three things. What do we aspire for? We aspire for Sat, for Chit, and for Ananda. We aspire for truth, eternity. We aspire for knowledge, and we aspire for happiness. But neither truth, nor knowledge, nor happiness can be found in this body, because it is temporary. Even if we do find some happiness, it is like a drop of water in a desert. Now, if you go to the desert, in my youth I worked in the Sahara Desert. Sometimes I would travel for days and days, and all you see is sand. But somewhere there are oases, there is water. You cannot say there is no water in the desert. There is water, but it is just like a drop. To make the desert bloom, to make the desert fertile, you require clouds and clouds of water. But one drop is not going to do the job. Similarly, we require permanent happiness. We require happiness without any mental disturbance. We require happiness that will go unending. Whereas the happiness in the material world, it is just like a drop when we actually require an ocean of happiness. It is a drop because whatever happiness we get here is conditioned by the back thought, by the subconscious that knows that this happiness is temporary. Therefore, Sat is very important. And when one is interested in the Sat, he can become a sadhaka or a participant on the path of understanding spiritual life. And like in any science, you require a teacher to become a doctor, to become a lawyer, to become an engineer, to become a mathematician. You have to go to school. You have to accept teachings from someone who is a professor in the science who can teach you. And there is no shortage of materially qualified people. There is no shortage of doctors and engineers and lawyers, mathematicians, whatever. Spiritual life, similarly, to acquire knowledge of spirituality, you also require a teacher. And we can see that even though there are many professionals in the world, there is hardly anyone who really knows what is the essence of life. There is hardly anyone who is spiritually advanced. And yet you have fools and rascals who tell you, you don't need a teacher, you don't need a guru. I am my own guru. Yeah, you become your own guru. You become a medical doctor by being your own guru. What craziness is this? So it is important that we understand what is the purpose of spiritual life. And the purpose of spiritual life is to understand who we are. That is the first step. And that first step, to understand who we are, requires that we control our senses. It requires that we become the masters of our body, that we actually implement on a day-to-day, moment-to-moment basis our nature as the spirit soul who owns the body. And certainly identifying with the body, thinking that I am Italian, I am German, I am Hindu, I am Muslim. This is not knowledge. This is not the symptom of consciousness. This is not the symptom of who we are. Therefore, in devotional service, there is one rule which is detrimental to spiritual advancement, and that is called niyamagraha. Niyama means rules. Niyamagraha means two things: to be too attached to the rules and regulations of our spiritual path, or to be detached, not to follow the rules and regulations. For example, I may think that I'm a Christian, or you may think I'm a Muslim, or you might think I'm a Jew, or you might think I'm a Hindu. But if when somebody comes and explains the nature of religion, which goes beyond being a Christian, Jew, Hindu, Buddhist, whatever, which explains what is a real constitutional position, then we cannot be attached to being a Christian or a Hindu. We cannot say, no, I'm a Christian. I don't want to know anything about Krishna consciousness. But if you're a Christian or a Hindu or a Jew, you have to understand what is God consciousness. Krishna consciousness is the process by which we become free from material designations. Therefore, to know our constitutional position in relationship with God is the very basis of spiritual life. If you don't know your constitutional position, if you're too attached to being a Christian or a Hindu or a Buddhist, if you are too attached to the external rituals and don't understand that the purpose of these rituals is to make me aware of who I am and to transcend the temporary rules of spiritual advancement, to transcend them and understand my natural relationship with God. If you don't understand that, then even the very basics of religion are not met. The purpose of religion is to understand that I am not the body, The purpose of religion is to understand that I'm a spirit soul and I am eternally connected with God. I have nothing to do with the material world. I have nothing to do with this body, with the extensions of the body like my wife, my family, my community, my nation. When you understand this, this is the purpose of religion. It doesn't matter how you get to this point. You can get to this point through the Christian process, the Hindu process, the Buddhist process, the Islamic process, Judeo-Christian process. It doesn't matter, but you got to get to this point. Just like you go to school. You may go to that school or this school or that school. You may go to this university or that university. The purpose of going to school is to become educated. The importance is not the school. The importance is getting the education. If you become educated, then you can say, yes, I have fulfilled the purpose of my schooling. In the same way, if you become convinced of your spiritual identity in relationship with God, then you can say, I have fulfilled the purpose of my religion. So, the Bhagavad Gita is all about that. And the process of coming to this point is to control the senses. Now, you may control the senses by physical and mental power, and that may work up to a certain point. But you cannot deny the action of the senses. You need to eat, you need to sleep, you need to have intercourse with others, you need to have knowledge. You need so many things which are based upon sensual perception. So what is the process of controlling the senses? The process of controlling the senses is to find out what the senses are all about. The senses are about a process of life. Enjoying the senses means it's a symptom of consciousness, it's life. But the senses, where do they come from? They come from God. Just like everything else comes from God. But in particular, God is called Rishikesha, or the controller of the senses. He has given us the senses so that we can use them in His service. Why is that? Because He is the owner of the senses. What to speak of our senses? The whole cosmic manifestation, everything you see is an expansion of God. It belongs to Him. It is meant for His pleasure. It is meant to be used according to His project, according to His desire, because He's the creator. Therefore, when we use our senses and everything in the material universe for the purpose for which it was created, we come on the real platform which reflects our spiritual identity. Therefore, Rishikesha Sevanam Bhaktir Uchyate. Bhakti, devotion, means to engage our senses in the service of the owner of the senses. And here in the purpose, Prabhupada comments how one great devotee of the past called Ambarish Maharaj, how he controlled his senses. He controlled his senses. He was a king. He was very opulent, very rich, so he had a very beautiful temple to worship the Lord. Savai Mana Krishna Padaravindayo. First of all, he used his mind to meditate on the lotus feet of the Lord. Why do we meditate on the lotus feet of the Lord? We meditate on the lotus feet of the Lord because we should approach the Lord with humility. We are not equal to God. We are depending upon God for every breath we take. Therefore, when we approach Him, we don't go straight to His face. We start at His lotus feet in a humble way. We recognize that God is great and we are great too, but very little great. God is big great, we are little great. So, Savai Mana Krishna Padaravindayo. Ambarish Maharaj, he fixed his mind on the lotus feet of the Lord. Vachansi Vakunta Gunanuvarnane. His words were used to glorify the activity of the Lord. Karo Harer Mandira Marjanadishu. He used his hands to clean the temple of the Lord. Now, for example, I live alone. I have a small apartment and I have my deity of Krishna, and I try to keep the apartment clean Sometimes people come and they compliment me. Oh, your apartment is so clean. It's not my apartment. It's Krishna's temple. It is my duty to keep it clean. Therefore, when I clean my apartment, I'm actually performing bhakti yoga, devotional service. So Ambarish Maharaj, even though he was a king, he used his hands in a menial way to clean the temple of the Lord. Shrutim chakra chuta sat kathodyate. And his ears he used to hear about Lord Krishna. Mukunda lingaya darshane drisho, his eyes to see the beautiful form of the Lord. The Lord is very beautiful, and by his mercy he appears before us as a deity. Sometimes people who are too attached to the niyama or the rules of their religion, they criticize the devotees. Oh, that is a statue. How can you worship an idol? The fact is that when the form of Krishna is carved by the sculpture, it is an idol. But when it is installed in a temple, it becomes permeated by Krishna's grace. It is no longer an idol. It becomes Krishna himself. How is that happens? That happens by the devotee of Krishna, who sincerely prays to the Lord. The pure devotee prays to the Lord, my dear Krishna, I have made a form which is according to your image, according to the instructions of the great devotees that have come before me. I have made this form, and I am begging you, please, you come into this form and give us an opportunity to worship you. When that ceremony is done, it is called prana pratishtha. There are many mantras involved in a sacrifice and Brahminical performances, but actually the dynamic is that a pure devotee requests the Lord to come into his form. And then that form is no longer stone or wood or metal. It is Krishna himself. So that is called Mukunda Lingaya, the form of the Lord, Mukunda, who can give liberation. So Ambarish Maharaj used his eyes to see this form. Tad Britya Gata Sparshe Anga Sangamram. And his body, he associated with devotees, so whenever he touched, so when you associate with someone, sometimes you touch each other, you hug each other, or you bump, or you shake hands. You in the social intercourse, there is bodily touch. So Ambarish Maharaj was very careful not to associate with any non-devotees. He would always associate with devotees, so his bodily touch became spiritualized. Granam Chatat Pada Saroja Saurabe. His smelling power, his sense of smell, he used to smell the lotus flowers and the tulsi offered at the lotus feet of the Krishna. So in this way, he used his feet to travel to the different places of pilgrimage connected with the Lord. Pado Harer Kshetra Padunar Sarpathe Shiru Rishikesha Badabhivandane. His head he used to bow down before the Lord. Kaman Shadasyana to Kama Kamaya. He trained his mind and his senses not to desire anything outside the service of the Lord. And Yata Uttama Shloka Janasya Ratihi. And he became attached and happy, Rati, to exchange with the devotees of Uttama Shloka, the devotees of the Lord. And in this way, by using all his senses, his senses became controlled. How they became controlled? They became controlled because the purpose of the senses is to do exactly what Maharaj Ambarish did. We were talking about how his sense of smell became attracted to the tulsi leaves offered at the feet of the Lord. So there is a story that at the beginning of the creation, Lord Brahma, he had 4 sons called the Kumaras, who decided to remain eternally in the childhood body. They did not want to grow up, get married, and become entangled in material life, in family life. They decided to remain as in a child's body, by their mystic power, they stopped the body from growing. But mentally, of course, they grew very powerful. And they became very great yogis, very great jnanis, and full of knowledge. And during their meditation, because Brahma was their father, and Brahma is a great devotee of Krishna, and because they were living in the upper planetary systems, they got a sense, a smell of tulsi leaves being offered to the Lord. And then they thought, what is this? We are so much absorbed in the Brahman, or the spiritual effulgence of creation, but somehow the smell of tulsi is attracting us. So they traced out, and this smell was coming from Vaikuntha. So they went to Vaikuntha. Vaikuntha is the planets where Lord Vishnu lives. When they came to the gate of Vaikuntha, the doorman, Jaya and Vijaya, stopped them and said, you cannot enter here. And they became upset. They said, what is this? You're stopping us from going to God? These are our natural instinct to find out the nature of the Lord. We have smelled the lotus, the tulsi from his lotus feet. We want to know more, and you're stopping us. You're stopping our bhakti. So they cursed them. So there was a commotion. They cursed Jaya and Vijay, and Lord Vishnu, he understood what was happening. So he came on the scene, and he said, yes, he said, you have been cursed correctly, because you have not demonstrated your devotion to me. You have usurped, you have become intoxicated by your power, and you have acted not as my devotees, but as independent actors, and you have cursed these innocent brahmanas. Therefore you have to be punished. And the arrangement was that Jaya and Vijaya, they would take 3 births in the material world as demons, and they would be killed by the Lord. The background story is that the Lord, he wanted to fight. And when the Lord wants to fight, who is he going to fight with? Everyone in the spiritual kingdom is his devotee. Nobody wants to fight with him. So sometimes, and he doesn't become involved with the demons. So some of his devotees sometimes come to the material world to become his enemies. So this Jaya and Vijaya, the first birth, was as Hiranaksha and Hiranyakashipu. So Hiranaksha was the younger brother, and he traveled all over the universe with a great mace on his shoulder, and he subdued all the rulers of the universe, including the demigods. And he extracted very much gold from Mother Earth. And by extracting so much gold, Mother Earth fell down from her orbit, and she fell into the Garbhodaka ocean. So this caused huge disturbance in the universal affairs. And Lord Brahma begged Vishnu to come and set the situation right. So from Lord Brahma's nostril, this beautiful incarnation of Vishnu manifested itself. Vishnu, he can manifest himself in any way he wants. And he can appear in any form he wants. He appeared as a boar, a very small boar. Therefore he is called Varaha or Shukara. And he grew to a gigantic form, and he also carried a mace, and he challenged the demon Hiranaksha. Nowadays, we are living under a similar situation, because the history of the universe keep repeating itself, because we are all humans, we are all spirit soul, we have so many desires, and ultimately everything ends up the same way. And the situation now is that the earth has become overburdened by the unnecessary military force of political leaders who pose as a royal order but are actually demons. Right now there are tens of thousands of nuclear weapons. There are military phalanx, military armies all over this planet. At any moment there can be a world war. At any moment we can destroy life as we know it. And It's the same situation as was there when Hiranaksha caused the earth planet to fall from its position. The earth planet, Prithvi Devi, she's very much a devotee of the Lord. She's very happy to support all the living entities, provided we act in connection with God. Just like a mother, she's very happy to maintain her children and educate them, and she's very unhappy when they deviate from the proper education, from the proper goals of life. So 30 minutes are up. We will talk some more about the fight between Hiranaksha and Lord Varaha at the next class. And thank you for listening. So here we have some of our guests. Major confusion, my humble obeisances to the assembled Vaishnava devotees. Thank you, Atmavidya Prabhu. Mandi Prior, Hare Krishna. Anna Maria, Hare Krishna. Sorry for being late. Better late than never. My obeisances to the assembled devotees. Actually, we can never be late in Krishna consciousness because time is cyclical. Doesn't matter which part of the circle you enter. You will keep going in a circle. So the circle of knowledge is always a beginning. Even if we become defeated in our practice of God consciousness, even if we face great difficulties, we can always start anew. The beauty and the great secret of bhakti is that you can always chant Hare Krishna no matter from where you're coming from. And Krishna and the purification will begin from there. Biplab Saha, Hare Krishna Dandavad. Mandy Prior, thank you very much and good night, our dear Prabhu. Hare Krishna. Very good. Thank you for listening. And we will again meet hopefully on Friday evening. And if you have any questions or any comments, please continue your posting. Thank you very much. Hari Bol.